Hello everyone, my name is Jason Knopf. I'm Global Leadership Fellow at Conservation International and Executive Producer of Planet India. Thank you very much for coming today to our special session on Great People's Forests and Planet India. We're very lucky. We have an excellent chair for our panel discussion today. Please introduce Ridhima Kadav. Ridhima has been working in environmental causes and conservation and energy since she was 11 years old. She has set up the first sustainability fund at Goldman Sachs and has been working as an advisor to Mark Carney, the Governor Bank of England, and the Special Envoy for the U.S. Secretary General, in addition to John Kerry, President Biden's climate envoy and former Secretary of State. So one of the most experienced voices on climate and energy in India. I'm very happy to have her here today. Ridhima, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jason, and thank you to all of you for being here this afternoon and to our esteemed panel. I think we're all very excited to share with you what this incredible team and individuals have been putting together, and so we're glad to sort of get started. We are here to discuss two very exciting initiatives: Planet India and the Great People's Forest of the Eastern Himalayas. And this afternoon we'll learn a bit more about what these exciting initiatives are, particularly at the very exciting moment of India's historic presidency under the leadership of the G20 Sherpa, whom we're very honored to have here with us today, alongside, of course, our esteemed panelists, whom I will just introduce shortly. So we have, of course, Mr. Amitabh Kant here, who is the G20 Sherpa. We have Ms. Leena Nandan, who is the Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change for the Government of India. We have Mezani Irmadiani, who is the Senior Vice President and the Executive Chair of Conservation International for Indonesia. We have Mr. Saurav Malhotra, who is the CEO of the Balipara Foundation. We have Mr. Tamsil Hussain, who is the founder of Plug TV. And we finally, and not the least, we have Colin Butfield, who is the Executive Director of Studio Silverback and the producer of David Attenborough's A Life on Our Planet. So let's just get started straight away. Mr. Kant, thank you again for being here with us. We're at a historic moment right now with India's G20 presidency and the summit coming up very shortly, with the motto and the theme being One Earth, One Family, One Future. How important is the climate and environment agenda to India's G20 presidency?
The climate and environmental agenda is very, very critical. It's very important. It's one of the key issues being discussed and debated right now in the G20, and it's a part of a much larger ambition to drive a green development pact amongst all the countries, which will include many other issues, including ending plastic consumption, ocean management, just energy transition, and several other components. Including lifestyle for environment, which is being driven by the Ministry of Environment and Forest. So several key aspects figure very prominently in the G20 agenda. But important thing to say is that all of us are pushing for net zero around mid-century. But it's also important to understand that human behavioral change is very important for this. Because all this while we are talking about countries, different countries are at different levels of development. They have different national circumstances. And it's important to understand that out of the total carbon space available in the world, almost 90% of it has been utilized already by the developed countries. So there is very little carbon space left for the developing world. India, for instance, has occupied only 1.3%. Given its population, on a per capita population basis, it should be entitled to about 17.5%. But irrespective of that, we've put very ambitious targets on India, and India is the only country in the world which has achieved its NDC targets 9 years ahead of schedule. India is the only country G20 country which figures in the top 10 list of the Clean Climate Index, And more than that, India's pushed for, we've achieved close to about 185 gigawatt of renewables. We've pushed for green hydrogen in a very big way, because even if you do 100%, you go renewable on electricity, 100%, that will be only 20% of the energy. There is 80% of the energy is all hard to abate sectors. That is refinery, cement, steel, fertilizer, long distance transport. All that doesn't operate on electricity, it operates on fossil fuel, imported gas. We import worth about 200 billion worth of gas, fossil fuel, for all this. And therefore, it's important that we are able to use renewable energy, crack water, produce green hydrogen, and make all these hard to abate sectors renewable. And all these hard to abate sectors should be run on clean energy, that is through green hydrogen. So India's ambition is that by the time we become 100 in 2047, we should actually, instead of being an importer of fossil fuel, we should be an exporter of clean energy. We should be exporting clean energy, and no other country has the potential to do it other than India, because the climatic conditions are blessed. We are blessed with good climatic conditions, and we have very good entrepreneurship. And the other point I want to make is that in all this, there's been a recent study by International Energy Association Authority, which says that actually you reduce carbon footprint by greenhouse gas emissions by 20% by sheer behavioral change. And therefore, lifestyle for sustainability will be critical. All of us, each one of us, citizens will have to play a very critical role in ensuring that we have Planet India, as you call it, that we are able to really push for net zero by mid-century. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kant. Absolutely agree with you. I think India is at a very unique position to lead by example and to balance decarbonization with development, with economic growth and emissions reductions, and do in a way that can enhance energy security and independence, and allow the country to really sort of demonstrate to the world how we can do that, both at the individual, corporate, national and international level. I'll now turn to you, Leena ji, to tell us a little bit about, as Mr. Khan talked about life and behavioral change, and the work that is happening around conservation and environmental initiatives, using the G20 moment as an opportunity. So how has this opportunity been used to spotlight some of the incredible work that you're doing? And please tell us more about some of those initiatives.
Climate issues, of course, have been intensively discussed and deliberated. But the connectedness of environment and climate challenges is something that we have focused on in our G20 presidency, particularly in the Environment and Climate Sustainability Working Group meetings. And what we have been able to highlight during India's G20 presidency is the need to focus on forestry and biodiversity conservation. And in fact, this is one of the very significant achievements. It is for the first time that we have not only been able to discuss ways of, for instance, forest fires. Today, forest fires are something that are impacting countries across the globe. And apart from the loss of biodiversity, the huge amount of emission and release of toxic gases into the atmosphere cannot be overemphasized. So how do we work together to share best practices and knowledge on prevention of forest fires? How do we restore the forest fire impacted areas? And another aspect that we took into, and we very successfully came out with an implementation roadmap, which we call the GIR, Gandhinagar Implementation Roadmap, and it is one of our presidency documents. That talks about how we would be able to work together for reclamation of mining areas. So these two key aspects, which are focusing on restoration of degraded lands and prevention of future degradation, and in turn would help us meet as a globe, as one planet, to meet the targets that we have set for ourselves as global citizens for restoration of degraded lands. So that has been a very important aspect of our presidency and one of the key outcomes of the presidency. I would also like to add that the mission life that was mentioned by the Sherpa, Mr. Kant, that has been something that was discussed at length across the meetings in the Development Working Group as well as in the Environment and Climate Sustainability Working Group, because it cannot again be overemphasized that the need to look at our individual choices and behaviors and how they would have a positive or negative impact on the environment and on the climate is something that has been focused on, and there has been very good buy-in and acceptance of countries across the world. And we had some very collaborative events during our presidency, during our meetings. The mega beach cleanup, for instance, which happened not only in India, in all the coastal states of India, but also in all the countries across the globe, the G20 countries. That was an acknowledgement of the initiative for focusing on Mission Life, lifestyle for environment. And the Green Credit Program that the government of India is focusing on, where we are talking about pro-planet behaviors, pro-environment behaviors, being actually assigned green credits, being brought onto a trading platform, so that there is incentivization and institutionalization of these behaviors, be it doing afforestation, maintaining grasslands, maintaining water bodies, doing the right kind of agricultural practices. All of these would be captured through our Green Credit Program. We've had some very good consultations with the stakeholders, and we are confident that this kind of outreach for protecting and conserving and encouraging biodiversity is also going to have a lot of significance across the world, because there is a huge resonance of this as we face, as I said, the interconnected climate and environment challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Leandri. I think underscoring a very important point, that for those of us in the room who are constantly asking ourselves, what can I do? The Green Credit Program initiatives under LIFE being a very clear and tangible example to get involved, particularly at the individual level, and that rolling up to ultimately helping India achieve her climate goals. Moving on, I think, Mezani, thank you for being with us here today. Mezani, you've led Conservation International's work in Indonesia. Indonesia, as we all know, had the 2022 G20 presidency. So I want to turn to you, Mezani, to tell us a little bit about how you used that G20 opportunity with Indonesia to really bring to forth a very innovative conservation approach. And so tell us a little bit about your work.
Thank you. I've been blessed to be here today at the start of the India's G20 presidency, but also last year that was held in my home country of Indonesia in Bali last year. And G20 is an interesting platform because it brings really together the 85% of 85% of the GDP for all of the economies in the world. And these meetings and these dialogues that are created in the G20 is really one of the key elements of how we can fight climate change in the future, because now the issues of climate change is not just for environmentalists, and it's something that we face, it's something that we see in different places in the world, in my home countries, and these challenges are really linked to how are we going to live, what kind of world we live in, and also including what types of economic activities that will be available in the future for the people of the world. And in this G20 presidency and the activities is really interesting, because then we can then talk about what are the economic growth trajectory for the future and how to ground that in nature. Because if we fully decarbonize tomorrow, for example, this will not be enough to fight climate change. Nature is at the heart of this, and so really efforts around protecting nature and the sustainable use of resources of nature is one of the key elements for solution models for fighting climate change. In the last year's G20 presidency in Indonesia, together with our partner Konservasi Indonesia, as well as the Green Climate Fund and the government of Indonesia, we were able to launch a new model to create and manage marine protected areas, as well as transform sustainable fisheries management. Over time, we'll create a loop that will fund itself over time. And this is something that we are piloting in over 100 million hectares in Indonesia. And the idea of it is really simple, is how do we ground economic activities like fisheries, like sustainable tourism, like protecting mangroves with protecting nature and fish resources? Because this, in turn, also, if we protect the ecosystem, we also increase the ability for not only the ecosystem, but the people to be more resilient in fighting climate change, ensuring that there's food security, there's jobs created, there's livelihoods created, and economic activities that link with protection of nature. So this is an exciting time, and this is why we are here today. Conservation International has been established for over 35 years, and it's really grounded in this this question around how do we protect important ecosystem for people, because really linking that conservation and that protection with people is necessary, because people are the ones safeguarding these activities, and these incentivizing protection with people's livelihood on the ground is really the key to sustainability in the future. So we're very excited to be here today with launching the Great People's Forest and Planet India together with the partners here in India. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mezani, and absolutely, I think you correctly highlighted the point that people are at the heart of this transition, of the just transition, as Mr. Kant highlighted. And so I will now turn to Saurabh, who is implementing a lot of these exciting initiatives and will discuss with us one of the projects that we're unveiling and excited to share with you today, the Great People's Forest. Saurabh, tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about what it is about, how the initiative will work, and how you're using this G20 presidency to sort of really uplift the incredible work that's happening.
Absolutely. I think to start with, we at the Balipara Foundation have been quite single-mindedly focused on the Eastern Himalayas for the last 15 years. The Eastern Himalayan story at the Balipara Foundation began with the Naturenomics Forum, led actually by our steward, Ranjit, here in the audience. And the reason why we focus on the region is not just because it's home, but also because it's an incredibly unique, single connected ecosystem, which actually spans the entirety of Northeast India, it spans the entirety of Bhutan, it goes all the way into Nepal and goes all the way down to the mangroves of West Bengal and Bangladesh, right? So it's one ecosystem which begins at the world's tallest mountains, ends at the world's largest mangrove ecosystem, and actually contains two of the world's largest rivers and the biggest delta. This entire mountain to mangrove ecosystem also contains an incredible 12% of the world's biodiversity, right? And I think these are just facts that we don't know about. I mean, us in Delhi don't know about these facts, and people across the world don't know about the importance of this region, for the 1 billion people at least who depend on nature and water from the region. And I think people underestimate the importance of this region in regulating climate globally. We've been driving policy platforms and action agendas for both restoration and conservation of land across the Eastern Himalayas. And we saw a few opportunities. We've been inspired by our conversations with our G20 Chairperson, Mr. Kant, and with Leena Nandanji, to actually being able to drive further action and in being able to do much more than we have been able to do. We were inspired by what Conservation International actually managed to launch last year at Indonesia's G20 presidency. So we took a huge leap of faith, and together with the help, support, and blessings of pretty much everyone on this panel and in the audience, we said that we'll bring together the best organizations who work in the region. We in South Asia, in India, have some of the world's leading environmental NGOs. We have the Energy and Resources Institute and ATRI, both part of this initiative. And under this initiative, we will band together as conservationists and help each other to scale the work that we do best, with a collective agenda of planting 1 billion trees, restoring 1 million hectares of land. And we know that this program will directly impact at least 4 million people who live in the region. And we know that we have to do this now, because the criticality of global warming and its effects on the world and the region are incredible. So if we don't do it now, then when? And India's G20 presidency, I think, gave us the correct momentum, support, to be able to be this ambitious and to actually announce to the world right now that we will do it and that we'll do it together with our partners And we'll do it together with our partners in the countries, and we'll do it together with the support of the government and G20 countries.
That's incredible. So that's, in case you missed the numbers, which are absolutely incredible, 1 billion, a million hectares, 4 million lives impacted. That's absolutely incredible impact being created as part of the Great People's Project, thanks to the work of Saurav and his team and Ranjit as well. We'll now turn to Tamsil, who will share with us the next exciting initiative that we're all here to discuss, Planet India, and some exciting announcements and initiatives and partnerships that have been in the works. So I'll turn it over to you, Tamsil.
Ridhima. So Planet India, right? Just before I start at Plug TV, what we do is we help normal citizens, everyone and anyone, tell stories on their own, which are unbiased and powerful and positive in nature, right? We've done it when Prime Minister's TB Mukt Bharat as a big tuberculosis program started. And we saw some of the first time, like citizens telling their own stories about how to literally fight TB. And last year when G20 was announced and the message for G20 was announced, we were so inspired. And that's when Jason, Colin, and me, all three of us got together and we need to change the way stories on environment, climate are told. And why not start from India, right? And Planet India came about. It's one of the most ambitious storytelling campaigns and projects that have actually ever been designed. And we're also obviously inspired by Silverback Studios, who are actually the world's best environment storytellers. And combining both the energies, we've created some of the most untold, unheard, powerful solutions in India done by people that will go to the world for the first time through some of the most unbelievable formats of stories that we can imagine. And one of the biggest problems that happens when you want to tell climate stories is that you actually don't have footage available. You don't have access to amazing footage. And the first announcement that I'm really excited to make is, along with Colin, is that everything that you see on Planet India, which we'll talk a bit more about, is open source and live on Open Planet, which is a platform that Colin and his team has been building. So, can I give it to him?
Sure. Colin.
Thanks, Tamsil, and thank you, everybody, for coming here today. We're probably best known at Silverback for making films about nature, about big stories about wildlife. But you know, the most interesting species that has ever lived on our planet, of all the billions of species that ever lived, are humans, are us. Because we are the only species that has ever lived that is capable of imagining a future and then planning towards it. Imagining when India's going to be 100. Imagining what the world's going to be like when our children grow up. And the way we communicate that is often through stories. It's about having a shared human story about what the future could be. And what was incredibly inspiring about having the privilege of working with Indian creatives, with Indian conservationists, finding out the amazing stories that are going on across India, was the ability to do two things. And the first of which was to uncover some of the most incredible entrepreneurial untold stories. I learned an interesting word when we first started this, which I'm going to pronounce badly, please apologize, but the word jugaad. Did I get that right? Is that even? Yeah, it's okay. Okay, it's good. And which is, it's a word I've never heard before, but the sentiment is incredible, and it comes through in all of these stories, the idea of practically finding ways to solve problems. And all of the stories we've created for Planet India together all show that incredible entrepreneurial can-do spirit. But what's important is that that story is shared with the world, with everybody across India, but everybody across the world as well, because this is the shared human story of the next few decades, the transition to becoming a sustainable planet, a stable planet once again. So as well as working with these many of the incredible people in this room to create those stories, we've also created a platform called Open Planet, where all of the different aspects of those stories are given away, open source, completely for free, for people to tell their own stories. Because no one of us can own the world's story. Everybody has to be able to tell their Planet India story, the jugaad they have created, and sharing that with the world. And only by doing that do we get to the position where we can get the sort of societal change that we were talking about a little bit earlier, the millions of us all taking individual actions, but also the world changing so the green businesses can thrive, so it's easier to enact transitions toward net zero, so the G20 is even more motivated to move to the next stage. And that's part of creating that shared human story. And to give you a little idea of how it all comes together, if I may, we created a film together that sort of shows the ambition of Planet India, which effectively starts today. Thank you.
India pulses with life. The world's most populous country and fastest growing major economy. Home to nearly 10% of the world's wild species. Where we place our relationship with nature at the heart of our culture. But now, India is on the front line of climate change. And Indians have no choice but to respond. We are responding with ingenuity, with urgency, with our hearts and minds. Planet India is the story of this critical moment. The story of how adversity can be met with creativity and how challenges can create opportunities. The story of a new generation of Indians who are leading the way, protecting wildlife and communities, our economy and our planet. From the world's leading environmental filmmakers and India's top creative talent comes a first-of-its-kind campaign.
This is my Planet India story.
That will reach hundreds of millions of people across India and the world. As world leaders gather in New Delhi for the G20 summit, Planet India will revolutionize the way we tell stories about the planet. Change the way people think about India's potential. And show the world how we can build a future for people and nature.
That's absolutely incredible, and I think for those of us who saw that, there's obviously more coming. But before we sort of unveil everything that the exciting announcements that we have planned, I'll also just one more time just quickly turn to the G20 Sherpa. G20 has touched every corner of India, and it is more than just next week's summit, and you would know that better than anyone. Love to get your reflections on how communities, people, different organizations across the length and breadth of the country have responded to the G20 agenda, and how some of these initiatives that are coming to light, like Planet India, are an example of how all of this is leading to a groundswell of action.
So we've done our G20 presidency in a very different manner. India's G20 presidency has been done in a very different manner from any other G20 presidency. Normally G20 presidencies are held in one city or two cities. The Prime Minister decided that India should do it in all the states of India. So every state and union territory. We've done it in over 60 cities of India. So we've attempted to transform these cities in terms of their drainage, sewage, solid waste, etc. But more than that, we made this a people's presidency by taking it to the people of India. So every school, every college, every university, through model G20s, essay contests, quiz contests, many other ways by which we've made this a people's presidency. And all the priorities of India have been discussed in many of these issues. We've had 11 engagement groups, Civil 20, we've had Think 20, we have Youth 20, who've gone on to discuss all our priorities all over India. And in all states of India, we've involved it, and this is an excellent initiative. Both the Great People's Forest and Planet India is a very unique, they're both very unique initiative which provide a great green perspective to India's G20 presidency. And I think both of them are great examples of how they've inspired, motivated, encouraged different organizations to drive India's green development agenda.
Thank you, and absolutely, I think we definitely agree that we're at an opportune moment, and it's a great way for us to tell the stories from across the country in much the same way that the G20 has told stories about India's great work across the country. I'll quickly also get, Leena ji, your reflections as well on the role of projects like the Great People's Forest and the role of similarly sort of working with communities and sort of highlighting the stories that we're now going to highlight on the Planet India platform and how important that is to sort of the overall leadership that India can demonstrate on the environment and climate.
I think the idea resonates wonderfully with the whole overarching concept of mission life, which is individual and collective behaviors that can make a difference. And therefore, the role of the community, the ownership of the community, and also that also includes the benefits to the community for that sustained pro-planet activity. All of these are at the heart of our approach when we talk about lifestyle for environment. And I also dwelt briefly upon the Green Credit Program, which is about incentivizing these kind of collective efforts. So whatever is captured so wonderfully through this initiative is actually something that we would look forward to in terms of collaborating and actually bringing to the table and bringing to the larger, the larger platform such initiatives which should be incentivized and which should be mainstreamed. So that is the idea behind the Green Credit Program. And this year there were two initiatives which were announced in our budget. The Mishti program, which is about mangroves, and mangroves that not only are focused on from the shoreline habitat perspective, but also the tangible incomes of communities. So the involvement of communities in maintaining, developing, restoring and maintaining these mangroves is one of our very primary objectives. And the Amrit Dharohar program, which is about the Ramsar sites and how we can maintain these water bodies, not only maintain their ecosystems, but also develop the communities around it, and the ownership of the communities should be recognized. So the entire Pro-Planet, the Planet India and this Himalayan Forest Initiative, actually they gel so beautifully with the objective and the priorities that are there with the Environment and Forest Ministry.
That's fantastic to hear, Leena ji, and absolutely agree on that piece. And in fact, the ethos of the Great People's Forest and consequently Planet India is not just to share the stories of India's success in natural and climate solutions with all Indians, but also on the global stage. So Mehzani, I think, would love to get your perspective on what you expect the international response on the Great People's Forest to be, and what are some of the ways that we could really bring that to the global stage based on your experiences.
I think we have an opportunity now to really bring these models to light, right? We know how important this is, this area, this region, and the solutions that's being brought together with the partners and with the government support. But the stories are not well told, and I think we need to take this opportunity forward during meetings like the UN General Assembly or the COP and other international events to really shed a light, to show really role models like India, like Indonesia, new models of economic growth that is based on protection of nature, and also a different model or a different way to think about scale. Scale is not to have one size fit all, but scale is really to bring together partners and solutions that work really for the people on the ground at a level that creates a larger impact for this climate change challenge that we're all facing. So I think this is really an exciting opportunity to take that forward.
Thanks, Mehzani. And actually on that note, sort of, who are some of the partners that Mehzani is talking about? Who are the people that you're working with? Would love to hear more about that.
For sure. I think before I answer that question, Ridhima, I think I'd like to play this in two parts. So I know that Mehzani re-emphasized just the importance of the region. And Mehzani also talked about the fact that the world doesn't know about the region, right? And we have to tell different stories. So quite similar to the Planet India campaign, we're going to continue to work with Studio Silverback to actually tell stories of Northeast India, stories of Bhutan, stories of Bangladesh, and collectively stories of the Eastern Himalayas. I'm also going to use this occasion first to actually launch the launch movie of the Great People's Forest right now. And then I'm going to tell you more about how we'll actually make all these very ambitious plans happen.
The greatest challenges require ambitious solutions. And one of the most ambitious is taking place in an extraordinary corner of our planet. The Eastern Himalayas, home to the world's tallest mountains, two of our mightiest rivers, and the greatest delta on Earth, and the planet's largest mangrove forest. It is a single connected ecosystem whose lands and waters feed 1 billion people. It is home to 1/8 of the world's species, and its trees lock away carbon to regulate our climate. It is the most important region the world has never heard of until now. The people of the Eastern Himalayas are at the forefront of climate change. As glaciers melt, waters surge, and storms intensify, the threat to lives and livelihoods could not be greater. But the people here know what needs to be done. Communities are using local knowledge to restore their landscapes, planting trees to protect their farms, saving forests to protect water supplies, and proving that when we work with nature, economies grow and communities prosper. For years, they have shared knowledge and wisdom across borders, and now they are coming together to form one of the largest conservation efforts in history, the Great People's Forest of the Eastern Himalayas, a network of organizations from the mountains to the mangroves, inspired by India's historic G20 presidency. They will plant 1 billion trees for both nature and people. The people will take care of the forest, and the forest will take care of its people. Working with governments and businesses, this is a movement that shows the true power of forests. The Great People's Forest of the Eastern Himalayas. For the people of South Asia. For the people of the world.
Theme of the movie, I think we emphasize across Planet India and across the Great People's Forest that our people know what needs to be done. And we are confident that our people know what needs to be done, A, because of the number of climate stories that we have coming out of India as a part of Planet India, and because of our experience of the last 2 decades working in the Eastern Himalayas, working with great organizations who have proven models that have been shown to impact both nature and people and deliver beyond economic outcomes for people. We've partnered with India's leading organizations like the Energy and Resources Institute, who will be working together with us, for example, in Nagaland, to work with local communities to create models for sustainable forest use. We are working together with the Ashoka Trust for Research and Environment and the Ecology, who lead, I think, India's biodiversity agenda and pioneer biodiversity discovery, because we can't begin to save forests till we understand what really exists in our forests. We are working with one of Bangladesh's largest organizations, the Friendship NGO, who initially pioneered delivery of healthcare, but realized early on in their journey that saving and restoring mangroves are actually essential for development and would actually allow communities to grow food and would allow communities to continue to have households in these shoreline areas. Similarly, we've partnered with the world's first environmental trust fund in Bhutan that was established nearly 35 years ago. So through this diversity of partners, we will scale restoration agendas that each of these partner organizations hold and collectively achieve our goals of 1 million hectares and 1 billion trees. But these are not the only partners. We are still in the very early startup stages. Our ambition is to onboard at least 20 other partners in the next 6 months to really be able to realize our dreams. We know that it's not just people who will implement on the ground, but we need a variety of partners, right? So, like I mentioned, Studio Silverback and Pluck will be essential partners going forward in being able to bring out the story of the Eastern Himalayas to the rest of the world. And we have a very unique partnership, maybe at least the first in India, where we involve some of the people that India loves most after Bollywood celebrities. So we work with cricketers who we all love in India, thanks to our partnership with Rajasthan Royals, to actually bring the story, A, of both the importance of nature, and B, how sports can support nature, and C, really, I think probably the best way of getting the message of the Eastern Himalayas to all of South Asia. Right? Thank you.
Absolutely. No, I think underscoring here that collaboration is key, and that's also the theme underlying India's G20 presidency: One Earth, One, One Planet, One Future. So it's all coming together that we're seeing. It's one family. Tamzil, you've kept us waiting for too long. You have to let us know now what are some of the exciting announcements that you had previewed in your first few remarks, and you have to spill the beans on it all now.
Ridhima, you can see I haven't been able to sit still, right? I really want to make this announcement. So let's get into the semantics of Planet India, right? Planet India features 10 of the most amazing stories of people who have been creating behavior change to action, like in the most powerful ways, which is very much in line with the lifestyle conversation we were having on behavior change. But it also features something that India is known for across the world, which is home to more than 80 million creators. It features about 20 creators who have used the footage of Planet India. And as we're talking now, they're actually releasing it across the internet. But this one, I'm very excited about, right? I'm proud to announce that Mr. Jackie Shroff is the face of This Is Planet India, which is the main film, which is a 10-minute short film, which is going to premiere on Jio Cinema on 8th of September, which is on the eve of G20 before it starts. So I'm really, really excited about this announcement. In fact, what you see on the screen is the first reveal of the poster of This Is Planet India. Yeah, Kom, would you like to add anything to it?
Yeah, just one thing really, which is the sort of, I've never been involved in a film quite like this one. I think it's a wonderful example of bringing together the best of Indian creativity with the best of documentary filmmaking, with the most incredible human spirit stories from across India, with a quite remarkable personality and host and presenter in Jackie. So so excited to see this go across Geo, so excited to share it with the world, and such a privilege to have been a part of it, and thank you to everybody. I'm really looking forward to being able to do similar things with the Great People's Forest going forward.
So there it is. I think mark your calendars, September 8th, premiering across all different platforms on Geo, and bringing this to India and to the rest of the world. We have This Is Planet India. Please also join me in thanking all our esteemed panelists, and thank you for being here. We're very excited to share with you these incredible initiatives just as we head into India's historic G20 summit. Thanks again for being here. Please join me. Thank you. Thank you.